Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. To those of you who've just arrived on a bus, it's okay. Do you have a note from your parents? You can get one? That's good. All right. No, there are papers to pick up later. We are really excited to have you here, and it's my job to welcome you here to our place. It's also an incredible privilege and honour to have you here, but an incredible privilege and honour to be a part of the Hunter Innovation Festival. A wonderful initiative, and we're really excited to be a part of it and to be able to speak into not necessarily all the answers we've got, but perhaps some of the things we're trying. Yeah, it's my pleasure and honour to welcome you here. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Wonnarua people, the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. As we continue to learn to live together on these ancestral lands, I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. All right, now, I feel like I should do that talk that, you know, that happens on the airplanes, because none of us have seen it for a while. But I'm not going to do that. You know, no oxygen masks will descend from the ceiling. There are no seatbelts. The bathrooms are that way. And in case of emergency, you just have to run faster than me. Okay? That's pretty much the deal. Also wanted to welcome anybody here, you know, visiting us online. We're really grateful to have you joining us as well. One of my favourite quotes comes from an educator by the name of Tom Bodett, and he speaks about the smartest person in the room is the room. A slightly obtuse quote, somewhat, and the staff here are smiling because I say it all the time. But the smartest person in the room is the room. It's not about this room being smart. It's us as a collective, as a collaborative group of professionals. Working together, that's what gives us the best leverage and the best possible jump into that next innovation, that next answer. And so that is one of the firm things that I believe in, is that power of collaboration and the opportunity to find those various answers as they present themselves to the various challenges that we face. And so as we jump into this evening, that is the heart and spirit of why we do what we do here, that idea of collaborating and joining together to find those best possible answers to the challenge in front of us. I'm going to hand over now to Mr. David Cole, who is our, did I say that did I introduce myself? I don't know if I did. Oh, you know. My name's Matt Connett. I am the acting principal here. I just assume everybody knows me. It's just how arrogant I am. So I'm going to hand over now to David Cole. He is our assistant principal for teaching and learning and an absolute legend. So David, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. I feel a little bit like a fraud up here because I've only been working at the school for about 3 or 4 months. So to come and present some of the innovations and the things we're doing are not necessarily things that I was involved in. But when I applied for a job here and accepted the job, I actually had a little bit of a background into the school. So I completed a master's degree a couple of years ago and actually researched this school. My research is into 21st century education and what it looks like for schools to do things differently and innovatively. And so I met Darren, the previous principal, many years ago, and he told me about the slide in the primary school, and I thought that sounds different, and I came up and I learnt about it. But one of the things I've loved since I've worked here is that as a school, there is a constant willingness to say, what are the challenges that we face, and just to blank canvas, how do you address that? Rather than start with the 50, oh, but we can't do that because this is like that and the curriculum's like this and the buildings have to, there's just a solutions focus, which is a training that I did on one of my first weeks here, that we don't start with problems. We start with an area for development, and then we start with what are all of the potential solutions to that thing, and then we back work to how those things work. And so I think that's produced a really strong culture here where staff are willing to give things a go, and they're willing to try things, to experiment, to take positive risks and maybe maybe get some things wrong sometimes as we continue in that refinement process. So what you're going to hear a little bit about tonight is our journey as a school. And I'll preface by saying, as we all will, that we don't have all the answers and we certainly don't have everything right, but we're on that journey where we're continually trying to make it right. And our goal really as a school, as a Christian organisation, is obviously to present the gospel to the students, but we also want a high quality education that meets the students where they're at. I've come down from Sydney, or come up from Sydney, whichever direction that is, last year, and it's just such a different context out here. And I think it would be foolish as a school to try to establish a super high academic institution that forced everyone into a narrow pathway onto a university bent, because that's actually not the community that we're serving. Yes, there are those students in our school, and yes, we want to provide those pathways and we want to give them every academic opportunity there is, but we also have a very high population of students that have different pathways ahead of them in life. They may want to track into industry, into the booming tourism industry or the viticulture industry. They may want to work in a trade. They may want to work in an entrepreneurial avenue as they go and look at these booming businesses down in town. And so as a school, we're on this journey where we want a pathway for all students. As a community, school disengagement and dropout is a significant issue. And so part of what we have done as a school is to look at that and ask, how do we engage students? How do we speak to interests whilst also still calling them to an aspirational education, and how do we do those things? So I'll hand over to Mr. Brennan Guest, who's our head of senior school, and he'll talk a little bit about our building design and some of our philosophy around those places. And then after that, you'll start to hear a little bit about our Young Entrepreneurs scheme. And we've got some visiting members from the community and some students to tell us a bit about that. On to you, Brendan.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I think I must be an Italian by background, even though it's not part of my background, because sitting at a seat talking without waving my hands and walking around is a really difficult thing. So if I end up hitting the people next to me, please excuse me. Sorry, Matt. So this is super exciting for me because this is one of those situations, I think, where we were approached to be part of this innovation festival without us thinking we were innovative. And I still don't necessarily think we are. It's interesting when you look at innovation, the way I look at it is innovation is about if you're in a situation where what you're doing isn't achieving what should be happening and change is needed, and you go down that path to actually bring change, you're innovating. And it's kind of as simple as that. And so we're not a school that's going to be able to sit here and go, you know, we've done this and this in robotics, or, you know, we're a leader in STEM or any of that. Our innovation area is actually looking at, as David has said, what our students need from us to have a school that is genuinely accessible and is actually meeting where they're at. And so one of the first places we started was, we are really lucky because this is a green site. You know, we before I sort of used to drive past here on my way to restaurants in the valley, and this was just a horse paddock. And then it gradually changed and evolved. And when I got involved, it was already a well-established school. But one of the first things that I was asked in the interview is, you know, tell us if you could build a building of any site, any type for a senior school building, what would it look like? And so, you know, having that ability to actually dream is a real opportunity, and not every school has that. However, I would say that every school has an opportunity to look at what they have and adjust that to sort of replicate the same thing. So for us, if you look at our school, if you go over to the junior school building, the junior school is one of our first buildings that we built specifically for this site. It's unique. Okay, it's hugely colourful. It's got a slide in it. It's got fish tanks. It's got Lego walls. You know, it is an amazing building. And the first time you walk through there, I remember walking through there just going, wow, this is crazy. This is fun, right? And then, you know, if we push forward, one of the next buildings that we really had the opportunity to actually engage in and go, what do we want this building to be, was our Activate Centre. And I want to start there really tonight and just, I guess, paint a picture of why that building is like it is. So in that building, yeah, there's a basketball court, there's some other spaces, but there is like a world-class gym. a cardio area and a gym that a weights gym that you could go anywhere and it will stand up. The Wallabies have come here to do training camps because of our field and our gym, the facilities that are up to their standard. Our intention in doing that, and the reason we spent the money on that, is because in this area for our community, health and well-being are massive, massive issues. And so for us, we didn't want to pass up the opportunity of going, if they are massive issues and we build a building that is supposed to be a sports centre, it should address some of those issues. So you start there, and then it's about going, well, you don't just build a building. Now you actually have to adjust what you do to make sure you make use of that space. So for us, that was build the building and fit it out with this gym equipment, but it needs to be fitted out so that, on one side, a whole class can be in the cardio room and every kid is actually on a machine and working. And then you build that into your timetable so that now you actually, you find time so that kids are doing fitness classes. So every kid in year 7 to 10 does 4 periods of fitness a cycle as part of their PE program on top of the normal PE program. That is part of what they do. A kid going through here will know what it is to go into a cardio room and do that. Our year 11, 12 students, we went, well, hang on, they're young adults, so we've got this space. What's the obvious thing you would do in real life? Well, in real life, they would have access to that gym. So our year 11, 12 students have access to that gym before school, after school, and any time during school when they're not in class, they can go over and use that gym. That starts to shift their view of what it is to look after their well-being. If they're having a tough day and they go do a workout for 40 minutes, it can change their whole outlook for that day. So it's about that starting with, we've got this opportunity. What do our community need? And then what do we adjust within our curriculum program or our timetable program or our school program to facilitate that? If we didn't make those adjustments to our timetable program, the gym would sit empty and no one would use it. Okay, it would just be an eyesore and a waste of money. So then we roll forward to this building, and this building is, I think, fairly unique. It's a building I'm immensely proud of, and I just wish you could be sitting here while the kids are actually using it to see how it's used, because it kind of doesn't make sense. This space up here is our year 11 and 12 space. So essentially, any classes that are not space specific happen up here for them. The space you're sitting in here is a classroom. It's not set up like this, set up like the other side of the room, but it's a classroom. There are essentially 4 classrooms in the open space around here. And then we've got the smaller pods, and then we've got the smaller rooms again for those, we all have those classes that are 10 or 15 kids or, smaller classes. But it's also the space that the students use when they're not on class to work. We had a real issue here of students being completely dependent learners. So when they weren't in front of you, they were not able to self-motivate and, manage their learning, manage what they need to do next. And so it's a bit of a leap of faith to go, well, actually, we're going to build a space that kind of pushes them into more of that time. But that's what we've done. One of the things we've done with this space is we now, coming out of COVID, sort of kind of talk all night on this, but I'll try not to. Coming out of COVID, when our kids went into COVID, we didn't just keep teaching the same timetable. We completely reshaped it. We reduced the amount of time that they were face-to-face with us and increased the time that they were on their learning management system and being self-directed. Massive risk, but it actually worked. Some of our kids actually worked a whole lot better in that model than they were with a lot of face-to-face. So, Simon Breakspear talked a lot about, what do you learn from those moments where you've got to shift? What do you learn so you don't just shift backwards again? And for us, it was learning that actually a lot of our kids can and do work reasonably well if you're not face-to-face with them, but you've got to structure what the delivery is. You've got to give them a lot of scaffold, okay? So we've moved to a model now where we have a blended approach in year 11 and 12, where they have a percentage of their time face-to-face and a percentage of their time that is self-directed, where they have to be, they're here at school in this space. There are teachers up here who are part of their, their space and here to help them. And you can come up here at different times and you might find 3 or 4 teachers. You might find 70 kids and those teachers working with different kids, and you might find 3 or 4 classes operating as well, and it works. So it's a risk to do it, but again, the same process is in place. We felt this was a type of building that could work. You have to do some training around it, but you have to then adjust how you run a school to accommodate that shift as well. Otherwise, again, it just won't be used. And it's a pretty unique space. But I also think in terms of the finances around it, the cost to build a building, what we get out of this space here is pretty amazing for the costs that went into it. And you're minimising some of those costs that just put walls between kids. So there's a lot I could talk about. I'm happy to talk after about that. That's sort of a bit of a snapshot of what we're doing with our buildings.
I love that. And so that's a perfect example of we saw a need or an issue in our community, and then the response became, especially after COVID, particularly with independent learning, was we have this thing that works. We have these students that actually are highly motivated and work really well individually, but we also know these truths about teaching and learning, and we know that a good teacher can't be replaced. And so we actually know that quality teaching and learning is a fundamentally human interaction. And so how do we try to keep both those things? And that's where the innovation comes from. That's where we are looking through that kind of the solutions focus of how do we achieve both things at the same time. And it's a refinement process, and we're still having that conversation. How do we tweak this? How do we make this better? Because we are really committed that our students, a core part of what school is preparing students for the next step as well. And we know that so many of our students are going to workplaces or university where they're going to have to work independently. They don't have someone holding their hand. I find myself all the time saying to Year 12 students, wait till you get to university. No one cares if you don't hand something in, you just get a 0. No one's going to know you. It's this fundamentally different place. And it's such a gear change from Year 12 where you're known, you're loved, you're directed into this university shift. And so we want to hold on to the good things, but we also want to help prepare kids for students moving forward. Now, a core part of also what I mentioned earlier is that we do just have a broad spectrum of students here, and not every student wants to go into that pathway where they want to go to university. But we also know that futures change, and some students might say, "No, uni's not for me," but then change their minds. And so we wanted to build a pathway where we had students who could do things like industry placements and real life work experience out in the community with some amazing mentors, and we have one here tonight. But we also wanted the opportunity to get meaningful qualifications that would still allow university entry down the path. So Matt Stackhouse is the director of our YES program, our Young Entrepreneurs scheme. And he's going to talk a little bit about how that program works. And he's got some questions for CJ and Alexander, who are 2 of our YES students. And also, I'm going to say this correctly. So Kieran James is one of our community partners, and he is the director of the Merchant Buyers Agency. As that's explained to me, it's like real estate, but instead of buying houses, it's buying and selling businesses, which I didn't even know was a thing. Apparently it is. So Matt's going to facilitate a bit of a conversation with the students about their experience, and also with Kieran about his amazing work with Alexander.
Thanks, Dave. I really appreciate that. Good evening, everyone. It is a privilege of mine to be the director of the Young Entrepreneurship scheme and be surrounded by a couple fantastic students that will give me funny little looks from time to time. I do get a lot of time with these guys, and just gonna raise a hand. Is there any other who are teachers here? Can I just ask? Okay, I thought so. I knew there were a lot of you. So you may be asking, well, how does it work? And I'll try and see if I can explain it in simple terms, and then we'll be available afterwards for you guys to ask other questions. The Young Entrepreneurship Scheme is, as Dave said, an alternate pathway to the HSC. These students will receive their HSC, but it's a non-ATAR pathway. So pattern of study looks like they're with me Monday to Thursday, teaching and learning. They're doing subjects like English studies and work studies and business studies, and a certificate 3 in business that's really the result of a partnership that we have with a tertiary institution named Alpha Crucis. And then on Fridays, these guys go and do work placement in either casual work or in most cases, it's a formal school-based traineeship. And that's where they get their industry experience. And I knew that this was a program that I wanted to be involved with from really the first time I heard about it last year. I thought, this is really interesting. I wonder what this really looks like. It took me quite a while to get my head around it, but it was affirmed every time I would speak to a business owner about the possibility of them taking on a student who already had an interest in their industry, but wanted to get in and learn more about it. And so, because every time I spoke to a business owner, they would say, boy, that sounds like a great program. I wish that was around when I was their age. And I do too. I've got a background in business and went that route in a very traditional way, went and did a university degree in business management, and then did my teaching degree and have enjoyed teaching for the better part of 20 years. But this program is really, really unique. And so, for example, CJ, who you'll hear from in just a second, well, I'll let her tell her story, but she's doing a school-based traineeship with an accountant just in town. And it's awesome. The things that she's learning are directly applicable to the things that we are going through in the classroom, but she's doing it in a real world sense. I think she knew what a business activity statement was before any of my other students. And then Alex is also in my class, and his employer is there. That's Karen. Karen happened to be an ex-student of mine from many, many years ago, business studies. And so I might just direct my first question to CJ. CJ, what do you think of the program and why did you choose it?
I would say the program's pretty unique. I chose the program because I'm interested in business and only a few classes provide like business related stuff like there's economics, business studies, legal studies, but apart from that, you don't find too many classes if you're interested in business. And so this pathway provided a way to get into business with more industry knowledge. And I want to use it to go into university to get a business related degree, hopefully. And so I think I'm enjoying it because it's a different way to get to where I want. That gives me industry knowledge.
So part of the unique thing, if I can jump in here, is that while it's a non-ATAR pathway, through our partnership with Alpha Crucis, they can actually get guaranteed ATAR entry into university courses. And CJ, if I can, you're probably not going to like this question. You're one of our highest ability students actually in your year group. A lot of people might think that the YES program is for students that are really struggling with school. That's not your story though, right? You do advanced English on the side, you're coming top in advanced English? Yep. So you're one of our highest ability students. Why didn't you just go with the standard? Like, why not just go ATAR? You'll go very high ATAR, probably will. Why this program?
Part of it is because it is a way to get industry knowledge, and it's like a guaranteed way into uni with most of the degrees that I'm interested in. But unlike a lot of people that are going into uni, a lot of them may not have that industry knowledge that this course provides. And I just think like it's very flexible as well. So, it's not just every class is business. You still get to choose some of your classes, like how I do advanced English or economics. And I think that it's just an ideal class for me that suits me. And so I chose it.
Right. Thanks, CJ. Alex, different story, obviously, different kid. Tell us why you chose to take the YES program.
So I chose the YES program because being autistic myself, I thrive off structure and I thrive off having a smaller class and having one kind of teacher who can kind of care for you instead of with the normal high school structure, changing from this class with this teacher to this class with this teacher. And sure, that works for some kids. But for me, I like to have that one teacher who I can go to and trust that they're going to know what class I'm talking about. So I found with the YES program that's kind of what it was marketed as, and it's definitely has that, and that kind of constant structure, and having that one awesome teacher was just what I needed.
I paid him to say that. Alex, you also had a really natural knack and interest in business. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I love business, and that's also another reason, because I had originally thought to tell mum and dad that, hey, can I drop out of school and do an apprenticeship? Sure, that's what I'll do. But my love is truly with business. I love everything about business, even the boring things like the paperwork. I find it just so interesting. And even more than that, I love the entrepreneur side of business and kind of making money and finding a new way to make money quicker. And being named the Entrepreneur program, I thought it was made for me.
I remember meeting Alex, and I think you may remember that last year when you came up and spoke to me, and we talked about mentoring. That's a big part of the program. Is it's small enough to be able to have a lot of time with students and get to know them and know what their learning styles are. Alex, I think you said, I'd really like to be mentored by Richard Branson. Was that?
I forget. I remember when you said that we could do work placement with owner and learning about a business. I said, oh, do you reckon we can get a hold of the owner of McDonald's Corporation?
Yeah. So, well, look, we might get there one day. But funnily enough, I left, and within 24 hours, I had Kieran in mind, because I obviously have a bit of a relationship with him, but because of the business that he does. So, Kieran, I wondered if you might be willing to introduce yourself and just maybe talk through your initial thoughts when I spoke to you about taking on a young man like Alex, and what that process has been like for you.
Sure. So yeah, I guess explaining what we do, because yes, it is kind of like it's incredibly niche, but essentially I work with business owners and individuals who want to acquire another business, and so for a variety of reasons. So we work across a range of industries and sizes, but typically in the kind of 500,000 to 2 mil space. And so I guess the second part of the question, why did I think when you're like, do you want to take on a school-based trainee, was what's a school-based trainee? But then I guess so Matt told me about Alex, or didn't tell me his name, but just kind of said, this is the type of student that I had in mind. And yeah, I guess from there, it was kind of like, okay, this sounds, something that was doable. So we came and, do you want me to keep going from there? Yeah. Came and met Alex in his interview, was telling me about how he created an Instagram page and got a few thousand followers and started getting paid to post on Instagram. And I was like, I like this guy. Our business is, I guess one of the competencies that we were missing was around our digital kind of engagement. So that is, we do a lot of, we talk to business owners through Facebook. We can be ridiculously targeted with marketing. So if I'm trying to say I want to buy a mechanic in within half an hour of Cessnock, there's ways that you can use Facebook to do that. And so I guess that's something that Alex kind of brought that skill into our business, which was great. Had to kind of talk a little bit about what we actually do, because no one knows that. But going from there, I guess that was that was kind of beneficial for both of us there, I think. Does that answer your question?
Can I jump in there too? Like, it's one of those things that I think Alex is a really, really good story for this. But this area, almost more than any other area in New South Wales, has ridiculous unemployment statistics around youth. Like in this area is just insane. And the amount of students that are dropping out of school, sort of year 9, 10, 11, because they can't see a pathway through the remaining years of school, that then are actually within 6-8 months not doing anything at all, is just alarming. Like, it should not be happening. So again, it's about context, right? This whole program for us, the context of it is, yeah, we want to keep the kids in school longer. Like, we want to actually engage them in school longer, but it shouldn't just be to keep them in school. It should actually be to set them up more, so when they finish year 12 or finish that stage, they are way more qualified in whatever field they want to go into, to be at the front of any line of people like trying to get into an industry or an apprenticeship or a placement, and that should be the objective. So in a way, this program and all those who are involved with it is actually about giving these guys not just a qualification, but a broad range of qualification. That means that they are way more attractive to employ and way more skilled than anyone else sort of competing for that. And they've stayed in school to continue to learn social skills and emotional skills, and just in a safe, nurturing environment. That should be part of what we're trying to produce. And I think, the fact that we got CJ and Alex sitting here, CJ could have just gone and done a traditional pathway, but that kind of would have bored her. Whereas she's getting to work in an accountancy firm, which, is clearly an area she wants to go into, probably 6 years earlier than anyone else with the same ideas is going to end up going down the same path. So, and then we could line up, Matt, 6-8 other students here in the program, and they're all incredibly uniquely different, but the program suits them. And I think to a degree, Matt could sit here for an hour and sell it, but the program is quite unique in that respect, that it does offer these pathways for students to stay in school that otherwise probably would have looked to just get out.
And so the cool thing about the program, which I think we haven't necessarily explained, is that not only do they qualify with an HSC, but they might carry up to 2 vet subjects. So they might have 2 Cert 2s going on. They then also have Cert 3 in business with some additional competencies, can actually get a diploma in business. So by the end of year 12, CJ, for example, could have a diploma in business, her HSC, as well as 2 years of industry placement experience in a local accountancy firm, and guaranteed ATAR of 75 into a course of her choice at that university. So you've got a massive step up on some of those students that are just graduating year 12 going, oh, maybe I want to go to university and do a diploma or do this or do that. Yep.
Yeah, I'll jump in there from the employment side. I did, I think, 8 or 9 years in accounting firms, and like the trainees that we would get out of like second year uni and wouldn't know what a bad statement is. CJ, you've got them covered. When you go, like when they give you salary ranges, pump an extra 10 on it, they'll pay it.
The negotiation techniques are part of the program too, it seems. Fantastic. Now, down the very end, we have Carly. So Carly actually primarily works out of our foundation office, which is our group office down in Newcastle. Something which just resonated with what Brendan said there was, I'm not sure if anyone watched there was a documentary on the ABC a couple of years ago called Revolution School, if anyone watched that. It's about a kind of a school of hard knocks down in Melbourne. And I love it because dealing with year 9 and year 10 kids, I feel like while generations change, they also don't. Like 15-year-olds are 15-year-olds and they go through the same struggles. I was on year 11 camp last week with these guys, and I was saying, praise Jesus, I don't have to be 17 again. I'm so glad I've navigated that bit of life. I don't have to do that again. But there's a particular line that stuck with me from that TV show where there's this girl at school and she's really about to get kicked out of school. Like she's that bad, stuff's not going well, she's not coming to school, and I think it's a deputy principal just says she's not ready to leave us yet. She's actually not ready to leave school yet, and she's horrendously behaved, doesn't do any work, and she's 15, and that always has stuck with me that just leaving school is not actually the best solution for students that find school hard. Perhaps there's an option for us as a school to again examine that problem and say, how do we find a better pathway for them? How do we find a pathway that's meaningful? And so what Carly does down at Foundation, among other things, is she looks after the vet space for our students. And that's, I think, something I'm really proud of and excited about as a school here, is that we have a really thriving vet program that is for students of all walks of life. So, Carly, do you want to just talk to us a little bit about the place of vet and why you think it's so important in schools?
Yeah, thanks, David. It's almost like drop mic moment here, because I'm listening to these guys going, what can I add here? I'm so inspired by what happens here at Cessnock, but also across all of our campuses. That's been part of our schooling. I was a St Philip's student, so I graduated in 98 and did 2 TAFE courses as part of my HSC back then. So vet's not new to the St Philip's space. I think I want to work out how long ago that is that I graduated, but it's been in the site of St Philip's for quite a while, and it's only just been growing and growing and growing. One of our campuses has the biggest uptake of vet across New South Wales for independent schools. So the culture of vet across St Philip's is strong. This campus here has the biggest vet delivery that there is, I mean, as in number of subjects on offer for students to choose. This is the second time I've had the opportunity to hear from CJ and Alex, and every time I hear, I think this is why we do VET. It's for these reasons, for academic students that are heading to university, or for students that are thinking maybe work is what's next. Because I think what vocational ed does is give an opportunity for kids to shine that maybe where they wouldn't in the normal box of the HSC. And I think our education authorities are only catching up to where the students' minds are. We've got kids that are already working out the system and thinking, I don't need to sit all these HSC exams to get where I need to be. And so we're catching up. And I think what I love about the St Philip's organisation is that we're not afraid to try something a bit different that might make it work for students. So YES is one of the programs here at Cessnock. Another campus runs a similar program called HSC Smart Track. And we've got these opportunities for kids to opt into a non-ATAR pathway, which would mean no HSC exams, but still getting a university entrance if that's what they were chasing. But I think programs like Smart Track and YES, and what it means for students is, like these guys said, an industry is saying they've got the skills, more skills than maybe what a traditional pathway student would look like and come out with. So that's exciting. So I think there's a big place for VET, and you can look at our campuses and see VET's working. And it's not just working in the traditional space of a trade-based pathway, but we've got VET courses like here, they've got primary industries happening, tourism, hospitality. There's a VET course in visual arts, a VET screen and media course available at some of our campuses, IDT, like there's a vast range of opportunity for students. Each campus partners with a variety of RTOs. So you've heard here today that these guys partner with an RTO called Alpha Crucis, who offer the diploma pathway and the business pathway. They also have education support. So these guys have trainees employed on site that are working with the special ed department and supporting students across the school, coming out with Certificate 3 in education support. So they could be a learning support assistant whilst at school, after school. So it's these opportunities that kids get that they wouldn't get without vocational ed. So I could talk all night about how good VET is. Only 1 in 4 students actually use the ATAR to get to university. So I think that's interesting in itself, that schools need to start looking at alternate pathways for students, because ATAR is almost becoming obsolete. So I think we need to, as schools, be kind of running that race for students. Another innovation, I think these guys wanted me to mention some other innovations across the St Philip's organisation. Part of my role as well in Foundation is to work in our teaching school. So St Philip's 4 years ago started a teaching school, again with Alpha Crucis. So we've got 40 trainees across our schools that are training to be teachers, so in a bachelor program. They are employed as learning support assistants 2 days a week in one of our campuses, and each year rotate from campus to campus, working those 2 days a week. At the moment, we're looking at mapping right from a Cert 3 in early childhood through to a primary bachelor is our next plan. So really starting to map pathways for students from as early as year 9 and 10 through to their bachelor's degree. So that's another innovative program. So I think that's why I just love our organisation. We're willing to try stuff, give it a go, see if it works, reevaluate and change. But it's all about opportunity for students. And I think that's something that this campus is doing really well. And across the organisation, we're doing really well in that space.
One of the things I love about Broader St Philip's, and we're not just a loose affiliation of schools, we are actually an organisation that works across lots of different campuses, is that we really, and it's in the vision of Graham Irwin, our founder, who still runs the show, there's a vision for educating for all. It's not just a traditional pathway of schools. Hence, we also have our Narnia, which are our prep and our early learning centres, which are attached to us. We also have Dale, which is for our students with specific social and emotional or learning needs that can't necessarily function well in a traditional mainstream pathway. Then within those schools, we also look to have these kind of variety of pathways. And then even once you finish school, we'll still hold on to you and we'll send you through our teaching school, which is amazing. And the teachers in the room will appreciate this. When you go to university and it's like 3 years till you do prac, and then you get into prac, and then was anyone in your degree who just got in day one and said, I'm not doing this, and left after 3 years? And so we have this amazing opportunity actually as an organisation that education is not just your traditional school. It is from birth, actually, in our early learning centres for all pathways right through to after school. Mr. Connett wants to throw something in there. And young mums as well. Thank you. I should correct that too. And also looking broadly as an organisation, how we continue to open up pathways for those who struggle in a traditional schooling, in a schooling environment there. So I thought we're going to turn over to questions now. We do have one pre-question which I will read out, which was, how can local communities support our young entrepreneurs? So what resources can facilitate the steps from schools to business and startups? And how can we retain our young innovators within the community? There's lots of questions there. And I'd probably partly we'd answer that by saying, well, that's exactly why we built Yes, is to actually give that opportunity. But I thought, Kieran, what's your experience there? As working in a business in the community, what do you see as the value of partnering with a school rather than just waiting until the students graduate?
I guess if I can pick on Alex, because he's my sample size. Alex is great. I guess the relationship with Matt to kind of know, kind of coming in, all right, what are your strengths and weaknesses, but also what he's learning at school. So, for example, we had a business recently where we were picking apart their profit and loss statement, and I know that is kind of what they're talking about in business studies as well. So I guess there's some relationship that I can kind of leverage. Okay, I know that you're going to cover this stuff at school, and then I can talk about that in the business. There's some downsides to that. You're telling me you're learning PowerPoint. We don't use PowerPoint anymore, but things like that. So I guess having that relationship, and I guess again I can kind of pick on Matt. Mr. Stackhouse, as I formerly had to call him, to discuss like what you're learning, and that partnership is quite helpful in terms of training Alex and getting Alex skilled in attributes for the business, and obviously then him learning as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a real power in school not being an isolated place. Sometimes students will say, oh, I'm not going to do this in the real world. When I actually get out into the real world, it'll all be different. And I think there is a power in actually bringing the real world into the school and bringing the school into the real world, that there's actually, there's a dialogic process between those two. And so that these students are actually out in the community seeing what a business looks like, and actually, as Alex kind of shown, enriching the business, bringing new ideas to them that they otherwise might not have done, but also he's getting a powerful new dimension to his education that he otherwise may have had to wait to have. There is one second one, which is, these are coming from our Zoom viewers. Hello to those on Zoom. The other question was, what kind of entrepreneurial exposure do students receive prior to year 11? Do you like to take that one, Mr. Guest?
Not enough. It's probably the short answer, but obviously, like most of our schools, students have access to be able to go and do work placements. Something we have tried, and we'll probably try again, like we're a school that actually is happy to try something and go, well, that didn't work, or do we need to adjust it? And I think, again, I feel fortunate that I work in a school where those above me are happy for us to try things, and if it doesn't work, it's not a big deal. There are a lot of places out there where to try something is a 3-4 year process of talking about it, and then we might have a go, and if it doesn't work, there's 40 people who are standing behind you going, well, we told you so, that didn't work. So I understand that in this context, I am very fortunate to be able to do that, but we have tried running some of our vet courses earlier in stage 5, which is not necessarily uncommon. I think for us, the thing is that vet is very accessible, but there is a level of maturity that a young person needs to have to be able to also, go into the workplace and manage themselves through the process of vet as well. But yeah, I only have positive things to say about vet. Like, it's an awesome space to be in, but I think if you're pulling it down to stage 5, to give them more experience in industry, etc. I think just be careful with that, but also look, there are other ways. One of the things that I think we will do, it will come as we develop the Yes program. Matt's been working on really strengthening our relationship with our business partners, and that's a growing group with more and more business partners, where that relationship will become more and more two-way. So, if we've got, for instance, a local vine grower and winemaker, which we have a number, If they're partnering with us, well, that's a two-way street. Then you start to think about, well, how can we take our senior chemistry students out into the actual field and get some real life experience? We've now got this partnership with a business. What other areas could that business be used within our school network? And so that's a space that we are going to grow into, where ultimately, it would be commonplace to see our business partners in school talking with students. I know Matt's already doing it, but not just students in the YES program, but students in other subjects and other areas. And equally, those students having access to go and get industry experience for just the experience sake. So certainly that is a space that needs to grow. But I feel like we're starting to develop the partnerships with our industry partners and business partners to do so.
Yeah, fantastic. We have the opportunity as well for questions from the floor now. So we have some microphones around the room. If you have a question, feel free to pop your hand up and a microphone will appear in front of you.
Parents, for you guys to move into being available of the year in 11s and 12s and doing non-ATAR contributor courses, was there resistance or misunderstanding or poor reception from parents, and did you have to massage them into allowing their students? What impact did those parents have? How did you manage them?
Yeah, sure. So I'll repeat the question for anyone who's on Zoom, which was, as we've looked to move to alternative pathways and vet courses, what's been the response from parents essentially? Have they pushed back? Are they willing? What kind of interaction have we had to have with them? You can speak to this as well. As my understanding is really quite supportive overall. I think that schooling, I would say a fair, and data will support this, a fair chunk of our parents didn't finish school. There's a very large portion of our parents that didn't even graduate year 12. And so I think it's an interesting conversation with a student when they just say, look, Dad works down the mines. He earns more money than you do. I'll just go work down the mines at year 9. How do you respond to that? Well, you'll probably earn a huge amount of money, but so it's actually a helpful conversation to say, no, there's a meaningful pathway for you here where I very firmly believe that 14 and 15 is not a great time to leave school, where actually you can stay in a place where we encourage you in your growth as a person, in your character, where you'll build meaningful relationships that will last you for a lifetime, but you're still going to get some helpful qualifications and training that will still get you to that next step you want to. So my experience so far, at least, has been parents are really highly supportive. We do counsel our students. So for students wanting to go into the YES program or wanting to go into a mainstream pathway when we feel YES might be more suited to them, there is a pretty long process of interaction with the parents to make sure they understand what they're getting into. Signing up to a non-ATAR pathway is, you need to understand what you're doing so that you don't get halfway in and well, hang on, I can't go to. So we need to do those things. But you have any more input there, Brendan?
Yeah, I think context is king in this. Again, our context means, in a way, this was about what we need to provide to give those alternate pathways to kids to stay in school that were dropping out. And our context is we have parents who look to you to make the right decisions around their child's education, whereas in other contexts, they're constantly questioning. And we have parents who question as well. But so we're lucky in that. But I think that's also where you want to look at, what does a child have opportunity to get through the program? So this program, for our students, if these guys do everything in the program, they have opportunity to get an ungraded ATAR of 75, right? For not these two, but some of the students in the program, they were never going to get that ungraded ATAR of that degree anyway, and in fact would probably struggle to finish a HSC because the stress and anxiety created by the exams for them would mean they would just drop out. And that's probably another really important point in this, and we're all experiencing this, that more and more and more students are becoming more heightened in their anxiety around what they need to get out of exams and the process of those things that are meaning they are withdrawing more and more from it. So if there's a way of taking that out of the mix and taking that stress away from them, but still maintaining the ability for them to get a good pathway into tertiary or into their preferred course, I think if that can be demonstrated to parents, it just reduces the resistance. You're still going to have parents who go, this is not a valuable pathway, but you need to be able to provide that avenue into the next sector even with a program of this nature. And it can look like, so Waratah, one of our other campuses, has a similar program, but it's slightly different. And probably maybe it's different because of their context. And so any other school doing this sort of thing, and there are plenty of schools doing it, it's about understanding your context and not making sure that for your parents and stakeholders, that the context of the program you're providing still gives them that assurance. That's kind of a complicated answer, but it's essentially what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Any other questions?
Maybe while the rest of you are thinking about it, I just want to say about the parent thing. I'm a parent. I've got 3 teenage daughters that keep eating my food and won't leave. When I think of the concerns that I have, the opportunity in the YES program and through that too, they provide all of these incredible experiences, but they're still 16, 17, and they do need someone in a position like mine that is speaking to their parents most weeks. Like, I got parent-teacher conferences next week. I talk to them all the time. They're in constant communication. They know when they haven't done work or I need to speak to them about something. And that provides I think a support that I don't even know if they have in a kind of a normal HSC pathway, and perhaps they don't need it in that way. But when I speak to parents who perhaps did have concerns early on about, is this the right program? My sense is that it's been totally quelled, that they've been really pleased with the way that their son or daughter have responded to the program and its structure. So we could ask the students what their parents think. What do you think? There you go.
The nod of approval. Yep.
I guess this maybe is for you, Brendan. When the thought of trying the YES program and all that, when that sort of just really started, those first few, I guess, even days, what did you guys as like sort of, I guess I'm going to say upper management, I guess, executive sort of level, what did you guys provide for your staff in getting them on board and supporting them in developing this? And what did it look like to sort of help your staff do that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So that's a tricky one. And again, it's context, right? We're not lucky. We are lucky. So I came from the same school as Tessa before this, and probably you have to come at this a very different way in a school that's got an embedded long-term staff that kind of have their space and that's their thing and don't mess with it. However, probably the context of this kind of program, this isn't interfering with any other area of the school. So this isn't taking away, students from the chemistry or the science areas. It's not taking that we're not running a subject anymore because now we're putting this in place. So I think one of the things that we did fairly early on was promote this as a program. This is addressing the need that is coming from students who are dropping out. As we evolved the program, it became obvious that this is a program that wasn't just for students who are dropping out or even students who are dropping out because they couldn't cope or whatever. This is a program that we've got students choosing because of the other things it provides. So at the end of the day with this, it doesn't really interfere with the other areas of the school program. We haven't changed the timetable to accommodate this program. We haven't got rid of subjects to accommodate this program. These guys are still engaged in all the other aspects of school. They'll go to athletics carnival. They go to assemblies. They've got a pastoral care group and they have year group meetings with the other kids. They're not sort of isolated from the rest of the school. It's not a completely separate sort of little entity. And where it kind of fitted easily was that the Fridays they're out of industry placement. I haven't talked about this, but part of our blended curriculum that day is a non-class day for all the other year 11 and 12 students. So we don't run classes on the Friday. So that's part of their independent time. To begin with, they'll have to be here, and essentially they earn the right through demonstrating their ability to work independently to choose whether they work from home or come in. So while these guys might be on a work placement, that doesn't put them at a disadvantage. Like I know in some schools, like if you do a vet, it means, or you go to TAFE, you're missing subclasses of others and you get behind, and that's not the case with how this works. So there's not a lot of compromise needing to be made by other areas of the school to accommodate this program, and whether that's the key to it, but certainly that's what's come out.
Yep. So I'm just going to jump in there as a complete aside that's unrelated to a question anyone asked. But from my point of view as an employer, the 1 day a week thing is really helpful. We can plan work around, we know Alex comes on the same day every week, but also the longevity. Like Alex will probably attest to this. The first month we had him, we basically just grilled him with training videos. We work in a niche, you're going to have to skill up. We need you to understand words. You can grill him about what goodwill means and he can actually answer you. And so having that regular roster, I mean, obviously it works for your workflow and Mad, but it also worked really well for ours. So if you're looking to implement it, that's something that I really like as an employer.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, thanks. Question?
Hi, I have a couple of questions. One for Brendan. What percentage of your students are doing vet-based subjects?
So I'll be a bit off with the figures here probably, but I think there's about, in terms of, so if you look at the amount of entries, so we've got kids who might be doing 2, but the amount of entries, I think across year 11 and 12, there's about 80 plus entries in vet. We run a fair few courses, but like automotive in year 11's got about 15 kids, I think, and so there's a fair few entries in vet. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, surely your hoist is ready for an update, and I know someone who might be in the market for a second-hand hoist, perhaps. Anyway, just in case, just keep us in mind. Don't put it on Gumtree. Just let us know. Done. Okay, Matt, the other Matt. So I have some really basic teacher questions for you. So do you teach the Cert 3 in business studies, or because Alex said you're his teacher, so are you teaching him the Cert 3 in business studies, or are you teaching him work studies? What do you teach him? Do you teach him a suite of things?
Yeah, all of those things. So almost every subject that Alex has. What are your bets?
So English, does he teach you English studies?
English studies, business studies, the 2-unit preliminary HSC, work studies, and then I facilitate the content from the Business Certificate 3 in conjunction with Alpha Crucius. So all of that is on their Moodle page, and I facilitate the content, make sure that the assessment tasks are being
How many students do you have in your class?
13.
Okay, thanks.
So that's a little bit different for some of our students. So CJ, for example, you do a bit of a mix of subjects. So I have CJ for legal studies, then you've got English, and then you do economics by distance. So CJ's got a bit of a different pattern of studies, but still fits within that YES program.
She's very unique though. Like if you think the traditional, and we've kind of let it push out a bit, and we're talking, that's one of the things that we kind of, but essentially the core of the program is what Matt's teaching, and our philosophy with it, and where maybe it started was going, what do these kids need? Well, for a lot of the kids, what will make this program really tick for them is to have one person who is their go-to person for most of their learning, and is also their pastoral care person, is also their support person with their parents and their liaison with their business area, and that will make it easier to actually manage. It means that one person will be dead in about a year and a half. But that's the context. Then beyond that, the idea essentially was, there's vet courses that students can go into, and that will fill out their HSC load. We've had students push into other subjects, and that's worked. But as a simple program, it's this core area, and then plus the idea will be to bring the vet in beyond that.
Yep. We've had a Zoom question come in. They feel extra fancy when they're in Zoom. Does a school need to be a particular size before setting up a program like Yes? That's an interesting question because so the school I've just moved from has 500 more enrollments than this, so it's 50% bigger, but we really struggled to get a non-ATAR pathway up. We had cohorts of 160 students going through year 11, even slightly higher, and we'd get 4 of them that would want to do the non-ATAR pathway. And that was a context thing. They were very aspirational students. Going to university was what they were doing because their parents didn't have that chance. So they were definitely going to university, and that was a different demographic. And so, on one level, being a huge school doesn't guarantee you have that pathway. I guess the flip of that, though, is if we're allowed to say this, it's not the cheapest program to run. It comes with cost, and it's an investment that we are making because it is the right investment for our kids in this context. And having one teacher teach several subjects like that, there's a cost involved in that. And so I guess there would be a point at which a school might be too small to bear that cost. But we're committed to that because it is what is right for our kids.
There is a cost, but I would say this. You lose 3 or 4 kids because there's not a program in A, you're not doing anything for those kids, but B, that financial cost, that's what your program will cover. And that's a risk reward thing you've got to put in place. But I don't think a school's too small to run a program like this. And I think too, and this is where kind of the whole innovation thing, right? We've got to understand we are right at this point where that focus on the ATAR is about to drop off the cliff. And universities already recognise that. So they're already creating all these other ways into university. The rest of the world has recognised it. And schools need to recognise it because these programs will evolve, and then the schools that haven't evolved, these sort of things will be left behind. And it's not about that the academic pathways will no longer be important, but the focus on that you've got to do an ATAR pathway, I think is coming to an end.
Studies, the business studies, the English studies teacher, as well as the pastoral care counsellor and mentor of these students within this course, and how many year students do you personally manage? Is that sustainable?
If my wife were here, look, she's probably is. Hi, honey. Be home soon. When you set up anything, it's always hard to answer that question. And I took that on knowing that the first year was going to be really tough. I think, and even right now we're having conversations about what does the next cohort teacher look like and what other administrative needs exist so that it can be sustainable. I have 13 students and that's all I have. And so, yes, I teach them for 4 courses and then I carry all of the administration on side of that, but I do have a lot of support, especially in setting up school-based traineeships. So I think it will, I can say with confidence that I believe it will be. I just don't know what it will look like in 6 to 12 months. And I mean that honestly, it's been difficult. I spent all of last term setting SBATs up to the exclusion of other stuff that I've been doing as a teacher for 20 years, knowing, okay, I can get to that, but really this thing will live and die on these guys' experience in the workplace. And I've found that for every student. So they're all in either a school-based traineeship or a work placement. And so that work is easing. And so now I can focus on the other things. And in the name of innovation, I want to integrate project-based learning and actual events that we manage as a team where we can look at budgets and look at roles of communication and all the things that we're still looking at in theory that all of those students don't necessarily experience in the workplace, but I think we can integrate it into this program. So you have to ask me in a year's time. I may have more gray hair, but I'm excited about the program and it's good to be excited as a teacher.
Awesome. And we had another question over here.
Yeah, thanks. Firstly, congratulations. What a great initiative and a great program. There's a supply side and a demand side to just about everything. So with that in mind, what do you need from industry or the business community to make this program thrive?
Yeah, that's a great question, Matt.
So initially when I approached businesses, especially if they'd experienced SBATs before, school-based traineeships, they weren't all that pleased. They really felt like it was babysitting. And I think that that's because the relationship between a mentor and a school and the business owner was not managed well. And so that's what a lot of my time has been. And so getting businesses to understand actually the mutual value was massive. And so as soon as Kieran was willing to say yes, and then just going on this journey, I would say my relationship with City Council and Chamber of Commerce is really important, speaking to businesses. And I think when business owners understand the value, it's awesome. It's awesome. So yeah, I just need to keep networking with businesses and help them to understand what we're trying to do here. Because my hunch, and I haven't asked Kieran, but in 2 years, when Alex has spent 800 hours, that's a lot of training. And my guess is that he's going to be a far bigger asset and potential, employee at the end. And my guess too is that CJ will be that as well. And I've already heard that from businesses. So if I can get a student in the door, knowing that I'm their point person, not some random they've never heard from that's going to call once in 12 months, which is really what a lot of the apprenticeship support, traineeship support is like. I'd say that that's where the success is going to lie.
The regional context for us is really important too. And all you guys would have, like if you're able to tap into the businesses around you, one thing you'd hear a lot from them if they're trying to employ people is it's really, really hard to employ someone with the right skill set. Whereas, this is about there's got to be give and take on this. Like if we're just taking from the businesses that are supporting us and there's nothing coming back, like at the end of the day, Alex hopefully is going to be in a position where he's adding to the context that he's helping him. And long-term, businesses actually, have opportunity to employ someone out of school that maybe they've helped through school, but they know that person now and they know the context and they know what their skills are. So they're at an advantage in that as an employer. And I think, that needs to be tapped into more. And as a regional town, that's kind of unique for us to be able to do that. But even if you're part of a more general urban area, you can still do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Context is important. I feel like we're just surrounded by businesses. Like they're just everywhere out here, and that's a real blessing. There's just so much there, and there's so many that have a generous heart to help.
I was just going to add too that CJ and Alex are in small business and in the kind of that finance area. But I have 2 students who are working with Sparkies, local electricians, a couple that are working as basic construction workers in hospitality, and those are aligned with their vet programs, and that relationship's awesome too. If they're in an industry that they enjoy, it makes all the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had a question coming from Zoom for Carly, which is, VET has evolved so much over the last few years, and there's lots of new and interesting courses that keep popping up. What do you see as what do you kind of see on the horizon for VET?
Oh, that's a tricky one. It's hard because we're really governed by what's being released for us and then being endorsed by NESA. There's a couple of, the business quals just changed, the IDT quals just updated. So for schools, we're still bound sometimes by what's on offer. I think what we need to be clever about is what RTOs are engaging and then what can they offer our students. I think some of the courses, and maybe this is just my opinion, there's courses I think that are slowly becoming a bit maybe not as of interest to students, and there's more creative ones that are coming through that are a bit more futures focused of what businesses are needing. So screen and media has been really popular at one of our campuses. Another campus is looking at taking that on because nearly every industry, even as these guys said, need that kind of social media context. So I think there's some creative VET courses, and not often do people put vocational ed with creative courses. A VET visual arts course has been really popular at one of our campuses as well. So I think it's being driven at the moment for schools by what NESA will endorse for us. but it's just looking through all of that and seeing where your interest is. And campus to campus, it's quite different as well. And as these guys have been talking context, a vet course that works at one campus won't necessarily suit another cohort. We've also found cohort to cohort that needs an interest change as well. And so one time you might have 20 kids in a course, and the next year you might have 5 picking it. So it's very student driven within the confines at the moment of what NES is offering.
Yeah. I think we might have time for one more question. If there's any in the audience? No? We've answered everything. Lovely. Mission achieved. I'm going to hand back over to Mr. Matthew Connaught, who he loves being called Matthew. He's just going to wrap us up for the evening. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate the time. And I know Matt's going to thank people, but thanks so much particularly for Kieran from the community and for CJ and Alex. And hanging out at school on your night time's not necessarily what you always want to do. We really appreciate that.
So at the start of the evening, I started by quoting Tom Bodett, saying the smartest person in the room is the room. I love the fact that I can just get out of the way, and we can see so much happening. And that happens through the hard work and incredible efforts of so many people. It's such an incredible team to be a part of, and I count myself blessed to be able to play the role that I play in facilitating the room being smart together. So I do just really want to give a couple of quick reflections on something. My kids, I have 3 kids. They are 22. 20 and 19, and every single one of them had received 3 offers to university before he'd sat his HSC exam, and they all ended up taking offers into various different things before they'd finished their HSC and received an ATAR. It got to the point where my youngest decided, apparently you don't need one of those, and didn't actually register it, much to my dismay. As an English teacher, and so, but that they've landed on their feet and they're doing amazing things. And I think this is an opportunity that we as a school and we as a community need to really take up to investigate those other options that are out there. I do want to thank a few people. This is like the credits at the end of the movie. It's always better if it goes quick, so I'll try to do this quickly. I want to thank Brendan for all of his efforts in bringing this together, organising the vision, running the event, being on the panel. Brendan, thank you very much for all of your efforts there. I want to thank Carrie Matheson for organising, planning the event. I'd also want to thank Ellie Rolfe. She told me not to do this, and so now that I've announced that she told me not to do it, it's even more awkward for her. She was also instrumental in organising. She's done all the comms and everything for the event, so big thank you to her. Rachel Fraser for the fantastic interview. She's played a massive part in getting us into the Hunter Innovation Festival. She's also a school parent, and so if I didn't thank her, there'd be trouble. No, there wouldn't. She's lovely, and she is absolutely fantastic. So massive thanks to Rachel. Chris for the fantastic design, adjusting cameras over the night, and for looking after everything online for us. Isaiah filming and facilitating the online components of the sessions. Thanks, mate. Shania O'Neill and her hospitality students for the food that we've all enjoyed all evening. I can particularly recommend the little lemon tartlets. They are delicious. I want to thank David Cole for facilitating the panel and for giving us your words of wisdom throughout the evening. Matt Stackhouse for being on the panel and for everything you do for the YES program. Matt, I've known you for a while now and have known of your work at another school who shall remain nameless, but have often thought to myself, I'd love to work with that guy one day. And I think I may have even said that to you once or twice. And when this started looking like it was coming to take shape, your name came to mind. I had a crazy idea and made a phone call, and here we are. And I'm so grateful for everything you do. And I recognise where that question comes from. And we are continuing that conversation. So Carly Boyle for joining us and to share with us your expertise, all things vet. I do appreciate that. Kieran James for being an absolutely fantastic business partner to us. Really do appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to continuing to develop that relationship. Absolutely brilliant, and being a fantastic mentor to Alex as well. Absolutely amazing. Thank you. Alex and Chloe, two students that have shared with us tonight on behalf of the YES program. What I find is that you guys are the best advertisement for a program like this. And what I love is the way you have presented yourself, the way you've communicated your heart for it, your joy in what you're doing. And we love working with you. So thank you very much. If you could put your hands together for everybody in the credits. If my family and I go to a movie, we stay to the end of the credits. And we're just one of those irritating people. The people down the bottom are waiting to clean, and I'm staying here, man. I paid for this. But we've turned it into a game. You just wait for a name to turn up, particular names. And I don't know why I shared that story. There it is. We have the opportunity now. We've got a few people around the place who would be more than happy to have a chat. We would be more than happy to have a chat with you if you've got other questions. But also, this facility is amazing. If you want to have a look around, we're more than happy to have a look around with you, maybe to answer some questions. But I'd also be more than happy to take a walk over to the Activate Centre if anybody's keen to have a look at that space. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Please travel safe on your way home. Online, thank you for joining us. Hunter Innovation Festival, thank you so much for having us. Bless you guys. Have a good night. Thanks for coming.